I think I can get like an alcove green screen behind me. I got to get one too, bro. I got to get on it.
I got a fish in the background. Good evening. Welcome to Big Facts. I'm your host, Aaron Barrison, along with Justin Everett, and a lot of Philly sports going on right now. Pre-draft talk, some stuff that Justin and I have to go over with you. Mostly stuff the media just keeps taking and just putting up on a mountain. They just take it and they put it on this pedestal, and then we have to come on here and we have to correct it. How you feeling about all that stuff going on in Philly right now?
See, what you're doing is you're putting it on a pedestal.
Can't put it.
I'm really genuinely starting to get like seriously irritated with the stuff that I'm starting to hear, dude. I mean, so I gotta listen to bullshit every day in Philadelphia. I mean, you lived up here for a long time, and anybody that lives up here knows this just fucking nonsense. Like, I'm driving today to go get, I think it was my second or third trip to Dunkin'. I don't remember how much fucking coffee I drank today, but I was on my way out, and some fill-in host throwaway guy that doesn't go on radio normally is on, I remember it was 97.5 WIP, whatever it was. And I get in my car, I start my car, and it comes on. I left it on, and the first words I hear him say are, Joel Embiid's post-game questions that he was asked the other day left me, a little concerned for this team. And goes on to elaborate that because Joel Embiid said that Ben needs to stay aggressive and sometimes force the other team to defend him from a shot or a drive or what have you, that he took that as Joel Embiid was either being, props up to Ben, he did a good job, or what he thought was bitching and complaining that he's done it himself all year. And I was like, have you not listened to this guy talk one time all season? I mean, this is what he said about Ben since day one. Get aggressive, stay aggressive, take a little bit of pressure off me. Joe wants to be the guy. He's not fucking complaining because if he's complaining, it's because Ben took away from him, not because he's not doing enough.
Yeah. First of all, there's clear Batman and Robin at this point. Ben's job is not to take away from Embiid. His job really isn't to score. His job only really is to score when the team needs a bucket and he's just not being aggressive and just realizing he's 6'11", and there's a good chance that if he just gets in the paint, he's either going to be able to finish or get fouled. And that's just kind of a mental realization. But this is no different than anything that Embiid, or even if you want to go back and talk about Brett Brown, the questions he used to get asked about Ben, they've all been saying the same thing since he got into the league about his shot. And it wasn't that big of a deal the first year, but now that it's trickled down to the second, third, fourth, and he's not really shooting the ball, which he did. Again, I saw one jumper that he hit from a little inside the free throw line the other night. The fact that he's not doing it more, it's just going to continue to be talked about. If Ben was shooting and the media is going to just twist this any way they can, because if he just took a couple shots and he missed, I think we'd all be a little bit happier still. So the questions and the twists aren't going to go away until he starts doing that. So yes, they took it out of context. It's been the same shit for 4 years, but the questions stand until he starts taking shots, right?
Yeah, and I mean, this is really where the problem comes down, right? If you're going to be able to develop Ben Simmons' mid-range game, you and I have argued about this dozens of times. Everybody wants Ben to develop range, and there's no player in the NBA that cannot benefit from a three-point shot, right? This is just what the league is. If you have one, you're that more big of a piece to your offense. I don't care if Ben Simmons shoots threes. It doesn't matter to me. I care about Ben Simmons having some form of a consistent, and by consistent, I mean 42, 45, 47% from mid-range. Just give me a mid-range shot that at 1 in every 2 is going to fall, so you can make that defender that's going to sag off you and either double-team Joe or try to catch Seth Curry coming off a pick for an open 3. Make them have to play 5-on-5 basketball. So right. For me, this is huge. I don't give a shit about the corner threes that I see him hit 60 of in pregame. I know he's got the range, and I know he can make the shot. It's that rise up from the mid-range that makes that guy come out and be honest. Because if you're Ben Simmons and you have your defender come meet you at 18 feet, you either have a defender rushing at you where you can just run past him because you're fucking Ben Simmons, or you have that ability if he sags down and just rise up and hit it. And if it goes in, if you take 2 and 1 goes in, I'll take that every single day of the week from Ben Simmons right now. So I think it's crucial for going forward, and it's the reason why we had a trade deadline that was uneventful. because I'm sure they could have gone out there and gotten Aaron Gordon. I'm sure they could have gone out there and probably pushed for a Zach LaVine before all the trades happened in Chicago. We know there were guys available. I
Yeah.
think they didn't push all in because they really believe that Ben Simmons has got another gear or another element to his game that eventually they think he's going to unlock.
Yeah, isn't it interesting that the deadline comes and goes, the Sixers don't make a move? We've been talking about how Daryl Morey wheels and deals, it goes by, and we don't say a thing about it because they're in first place, right? I mean, as long as they're in first place and they're playing well into the playoffs, we'll see what
Who
happens when
cares
the
about the
playoffs.
rest?
We'll see what happens when the playoff comes around, which is the biggest thing right now. Speaking of the playoff picture, we don't need to get into to the Nets too much. They're again tied with the Sixers for first. Sixers are
Yeah,
technically
this game coming up, when is it? Thursday against the Nets?
so the Sixers have a tough stretch coming up. Just as tough as what we talked about. Remember in January, I think it was mid-January, they had a tough stretch of game, a road trip out west, LA, Nuggets. I think Portland was in it. Utah might have been in it, and they went like 4-1 or 5-2, whatever it was. So they have a tough stretch coming up. They played the Thunder the other night. They play the Mavericks, the Nets, the Clippers.
What day is the Nets game?
The Nets game is on Wednesday. Tomorrow's
Wednesday. So that game, just so everybody understands the context of why that game's important. I don't give a shit about what Brooklyn Nets are playing and how they look. That's the tiebreaker game for the series. Nets have won one, Sixers have won one. That's the third game of the series for the season. That is the tiebreaker. So if we end up in a position like we are right now, where the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers are tied for first place, if they win this game on Wednesday, that gives them the heads-up tiebreaker over the Nets. So that game is monstrous. It's probably going to end up being the biggest game of the regular season. I think that there's a lot of shit to prove, and I think that Doc is really warming them up to come out and punch those guys in their teeth. It doesn't matter if it's KD and Kyrie. If Harden comes back, they don't care. That's a game they have to end up with a W in the win column. They have to.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting stretch too, because in the third week of the month they play the Warriors and the Suns, but then they play the Bucks twice, and the Bucks I think right now are either 2.5 or 3.5 games out. So if you don't have a good road series, you play a couple tough Western Conference teams, and you and Brooklyn start to unravel a little bit, then all of a sudden it's not a 2-team race anymore. It's a 3-team race with 15 games, 10 games left to go, and all of a sudden you're now competing with Brooklyn and the Bucks, which realistically with the seeding 1 through 3, who you're going to play 6 through 8 doesn't matter much, Justin. But I think mentally for the Sixers, having done so poorly at the end of the year last year, going into the playoffs and done so poorly last year, it would feel good to finish first and give them some momentum going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and even if you don't finish first, if you finish a game behind Brooklyn, you cannot fall behind Milwaukee. I mean, we have to remember a week ago they had a 4.5 or 5 game lead on Milwaukee. So again, the Sixers hit a skid and lose a couple of games. Brooklyn, same, and the Nets are winning at the same time. So that gap is eclipsed a little bit, but you can't fall behind Milwaukee. You just can't, unless Milwaukee wins every game but 2 or 3 from here to the rest of the season and they just outrun everybody. You cannot finish behind Milwaukee. They're just not. I keep looking at that team, man, and I want to love that team. I love Drew Holiday. He's one of my favorite former Sixers. He's a great defensive player. He's a good playmaker. He's a guy that wants the ball in his hands in the fourth quarter. I love Drew Holiday. I was a proponent for going after and getting him till I saw how much it cost, but that's okay. That team's just no better, though. Like, that's really what it comes down to for me. Giannis is still going to be the same Giannis, and Drew Holiday's not a Bradley Beal that makes a difference come the playoff times.
Well, here's the thing with the Bucks. Usually when teams win championships, their best player is typically their best scorer, and or their best top 2 players are the top 2 scorers. And I would argue that Giannis is potentially, and I know he puts up 30 plus a game, but as far as a scorer goes, I'm not talking about driving the lane, dunking the ball, getting out on fast breaks, being faster, bigger, stronger than everyone. I'm talking about a skill set in the half court where you can get a bucket. There might be 2 guys on his team that are better scorers than a Middleton and Holiday might both be better scorers. Both of them have a jump shot. So when your best player has no jump shot, and again, this was the problem when everybody was trying to figure out who should get the ball more, who should we run the team through, should it be Simmons through, should it be Embiid? You can't run the offense or anything through Simmons because he just doesn't have a jump shot. So imagine the Sixers trying to run their offense through a Ben Simmons is the same as the Bucks trying to run their offense through Giannis. Now they've taken the ball out of his hands a little bit, but I think Drew will play a factor in the playoffs. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to get them to a finals appearance.
So I want to take that point you just made and piggyback onto something where I may be telling you you're a little bit right and I was a little bit wrong. I'm not going to say that yet because I don't know it for a fact, but it's really starting to seem like it after the other night.
There's the big facts first.
So yeah, everybody sit down. So watching this team play the Pelicans, I don't watch a lot of Pelicans basketball. I mean, I get all the highlights and, I see the crazy dunk Zion pulls off or the nights where he goes 12 for 14. If he stays healthy, and that if may be the largest if in the history of Major League sports, if Zion stays healthy, I believe that what we were convinced Giannis was 2-3 years ago when he was taking over the league, that is what Zion Williamson is. Zion's not 6'11" and built like, a scarecrow like Giannis is, so he doesn't have the same type of athleticism. But Zion is a fucking animal.
Menace.
And if he can find a way to continue that style of play at his size and it not catch up to him physically, he is going to be a fucking problem for years to come.
The scary thing about Zion is, and I think people are a component of him maybe losing 10 to 15 pounds because they think it'll be easier on his knees. Maybe it'll extend his career. I'm a component of that after he figures out his jumper and his three, which aren't bad, by the way. He can shoot, but he's just not a great shooter. Zion, when guys are trying to guard him, guys that are 7 feet, guys that have 4 or 5 inches on them, still don't want anything to do with him. No. And it's crazy. Not to mention, I've never seen a guy with a quicker second bounce than Zion has. So a rebound goes up, and he's the one that put up the layup and missed it, and he gets his own rebound. He's probably the best that I've seen at doing that in the NBA. And that, I mean, it's crazy. He knows where the ball's going. He goes back up and gets. It's like, it's unbelievable, his fast twitch. But this is why I say, and I've been so high on the Pelicans because I watch Zion and I see Brandon Ingram's skill set, and I'm like, how are they not at least a 7 or 8 seed? And I mean,
so there's two reasons to that for me. I think there's 2 reasons. The biggest one, which I think you probably would agree with, is the biggest one, is their coach is fucking terrible. We had Brett Brown for so many years. We had the worst head coach in basketball
for a while too.
Yeah, we had the worst head coach in basketball with Brett Brown for a long time. Anytime your head coach's last name is Van Gundy, you're just fucked. I mean, you just are. And the other thing I think is, and I wonder this is more of a thought, I think, than like I've decided this is a problem. I don't know that Zion's a guy that can flourish to the best of his ability when he has a dude like Brandon Ingram on the floor. Mm-hmm. Brandon Ingram is a guy that has such a versatile skill set that even though Van Gundy is a bad coach, most coaches would probably scheme an offense to be much more through the hands of Brandon Ingram because he's a true 3-level scorer. He's a guy that has the size and the athleticism to give you everything. So as much as we had this Lonzo Ball once out in New Orleans and wants to go somewhere and wants to get through, as much as it's important for the Pelicans to figure that out, like if Lonzo does one out, you have to replace that guy. You still need a primary distributor and a playmaker for a guy like Zion. I really think that they need to find a way to maximize value for Brandon Ingram because I don't know that those two guys can coexist on the floor together. I mean, we talked about for 5 years before we really saw, probably up until the Toronto series, could Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid win together? And it was a question mark for a very long time. And I think that their games are different enough that they can because Ben does not need to be the guy. You have 2 guys in Zion and Brandon Ingram that at their best, when they're playing their best basketball, are probably 28 to 32 points a night, and they're going to take 40 to 50% of the shots for their offense. And when you have 2 guys like that, I question, especially with such a shitty coach, can those guys find success coexisting with each other?
Well, you make a good point because I was talking to someone the other day, and one of the reasons that Ben and Embiid clashed wasn't because they were necessarily clashing. It's when you're a young guy making big money, you're a number 1 and a number 3 pick, there's just egos involved, right?
Yep.
And at some point, Brett Brown was not able to say, hey, you're the main guy and you're the Robin, and they did not want to get put in their place by him, and Brett Brown wasn't going to do it. Doc came in and says, we're running the offense through Embiid, and Simmons, you're gonna guard the best player every night, and you're going to be defensive player of the year, and I want you to be as aggressive as you can on the offensive side of the ball, but we're running it through Embiid, and these guys are shooting the basketball. Yep. So I was talking to someone the other day, and he's like, listen, man, when I watch the Pelicans, the problem isn't the roster. The problem is the egos. So when you have a coach like Van Gundy, you have Zion, who's a number 1 overall pick. You have Ingram, who's a number 2 overall pick. You have Lonzo, who was a number 2 or 3 overall pick. They're all on the floor together. Lonzo's shooting threes now. They're running the offense through Ingram. Zion's probably the best player on the team. Excuse me, the most efficient player on the team and the best player on the team. And everybody wants to be the man. And what coach is going to come in and be like, you're doing this, this is your assignment role. And, oh, yeah, Eric Bledsoe has to score too. Right. So, like, who's scoring? Josh Hart was just, who's scoring the basketball? And they need to figure that out. And Stan needs to figure that out if he wants to be a good coach and be there for a little bit. You have this opportunity with Zion and Brandon Ingram. You got to figure out what you're doing after this year.
I mean, dude, I got to tell you something. If you are a New Orleans Pelicans fan, I'm sorry, because it fucking sucks. I know. I mean, we accepted Brett Brown with open arms through the process because we knew we were losing basketball games. That was the point of what we were doing. Develop a little bit of young talent, make guys look good enough to maybe build up some more assets, and then eventually Brett Brown would leave. Now, obviously, it took him 3 seasons too long to move on. But again, if we don't have all those things happen the way that they did, we're probably not where we are with this team. I mean, that really, to me, is the biggest deal, is New Orleans has got 3 seasons to figure this out. If you think, and again, this is why I say I don't know that Brandon Ingram and Zion can't coexist, but I do know that for them too, you need the perfect point guard, and you need a head coach that knows how to, again, like you said, put fires out, really figure stuff out, dude. Like, you can't have 2 guys that want to be the man. You just can't do it. I mean, this is why these comments from Embiid get taken out of context about Ben being more aggressive, because people think that Ben is still the prima donna he was 3 years ago. Ben Simmons wants to win a title and move to LA, bro. That is his goal over this contract. Win a chip in Philly, go take over Los Angeles once LeBron retires, and that's the end. That's what he wants to do. Yeah.
So it's funny you say that, because when we talk about egos, I was the other night, Just, and I had been talking about Iverson for a couple days. I was thinking about
I saw this meme. Right? What a great meme.
I saw this run. So I wasn't even going to bring up a meme. I forget if I posted anything, what meme it was, but I turned on NBA TV the other night, and guess what's playing? Fucking Game 1 of the 2001 NBA Finals. It was like the 3rd quarter. I was like, oh shit, this is where it got good, right? So I'm watching Shaq and Kobe, and sorry, my throat hurts. Shaq at that time was the dominant. He was the man. He was by head and shoulders by far. You took the next 6 guys and added them together. He was the most dominant player in basketball in history at that point, is what everybody felt. We can talk about Kobe and Shaq winning together, and Kobe played a huge part in it. But I'm watching Game 1, and I'm like, God damn, dude! Like, Mutombo's got 4 fouls with a little bit of time left in the 3rd, and now like Geiger's trying to cover Shaq, and he can't. McCullough's trying to guard Shaq, he can't. Everybody doesn't know if they should foul him or get out of the way. And the Sixers, speaking of which, I'm watching defenses, right? And I just have to throw this out here. Iverson, just to get the point out, everybody knew Iverson was the guy on the Sixers. There was no ego. Iverson was the ego. Larry Brown was the coaching ego, and that was it. Everybody else knew I'm playing defense. Maybe I'll hit some shots. Raja Bell makes some crazy shots. Eric Snow banks it in overtime to give him a 4-point lead, and that's the game, right? So Iverson steps over Lou. This is fucking phenomenal.
But probably the most iconic moment in Sixers history is that step over Lou.
For sure. So they took a Game 1. The Lakers hadn't lost since mid-April. It's June. We're playing the finals. It's June. The Lakers swept through the entire West, every series, hadn't lost. I'm watching the defenses, and everybody tells me, and it was swarming. I mean, the defenses were swarming. It was like people couldn't get a shot off. Sorry. But the floor isn't spread out. There isn't 4 guys sitting on the 3-point line and Shaq's in the middle. It isn't Mutombo in the middle and 4 guys spread out. there's less ground to cover. So people always give me this argument about how tough these 90s defenses were. And if you watch the games, they're on top of it all the time. They're blocking shots. Nobody's taking jumpers. Nobody's taking threes unless they're wide open, and they're not corner threes. They're not from the top. They're right on the perimeter on the sides. The floor is not spread out at all. There's 3 guys on the floor with you that just can't shoot. They just can't. So there's 2 shooters, and one of them's your point guard. So we have to give credit where credit's due as far as comparing eras, defenses. I've been thinking putting this in the LeBron argument because you can take Allen Iverson with the Sixers team, right? And we give him so much credit as Philadelphia fans. Like, how the hell did he get this team with Raja Bell and Dikembe Mutombo and Aaron McKee to the finals? And then we look at LeBron and we count that as a loss for him when he lost with Cleveland, which I would argue his team was worse than Iverson's team, but we hold that against LeBron.
So when I look at that series, I've gone back and watched that series, 12 times, 13 times, and especially game 1. What I think is crazy about the how much better defenses were back then argument, my favorite part about it is, even with Shaq on the floor, if you go back and watch that series, non-fast break plays, right? Which means a drain shot by the other team coming out of a timeout, whatever. Non-fast break plays in the late 90s, early 2000s. When you had guys like Allen Iverson for the Sixers, like Kobe Bryant for the Lakers, didn't matter who else was there. You had that ISO guard. That's what, Dwayne Wade made a career out of being that type of player. Mm-hmm. When you watch those games, right, Allen Iverson was so good because it was very simple for them when it was a non-fast break play. Do you know what the play setup was? The play setup was let Allen go out. When the defender comes to Allen, the 4 of you fuck off to the other side of the court and give him as much open space as he can get to run around. And that is the same thing that Kobe did. Even having Shaq there, that's why they were so good, that team, because you had Shaq that could, even if all 4 fucking defenders went to Shaq, that motherfucker was getting over everybody. Yeah. It really is, though, to try to compare the gritty, like physicality is the word people look for when they say that it was a more defensive league back in the 90s and 2000s. It was more physical. There's no doubt. Hand checking wasn't against the rules yet. There was, until Shaq, there was no back to the basket violation. There was a lot of different things that changed over the course of time from that physicality. But to tell me that Michael Jordan, Robert Horry, some of these guys that were like what would now be a 3-and-D type player were great defenders. You can't defend the way you defended in 2005 like you have to now. You have like LeBron James was a mold breaker, right? That's what LeBron was. He was a guy that could do all this different stuff. He was going to be the 5-tool player of the NBA. Now you have fucking Kevin Durant, who doesn't need to defend. Because Kevin Durant, it doesn't matter how many guys you put against him. He's 6'11" and has a 7'4" release point. It doesn't fucking matter. You can't defend the same way. It's an entirely different game. And it is funny, man. When you shared that, I went back and saw some of the videos, when I looked up highlights and shit, and it is so crazy how we're talking about 20 years, how a 20-year change, dude, the league looks nothing like it used to.
Different. Yeah, it looks completely. I was having fun watching it, but I was like, man, these games can get. You remember the Pistons winning finals and holding teams to like 80 points?
Yeah, and scoring 85 to win.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
It really was. It was a difference, and that's the reason. To me, the reason why the league updated or caught up with the times, they wanted to get more exciting. And to get more exciting, you had to open up the offense. That's why shit like hand checking and physicality went away.
Yeah, it was definitely a different game. Let's move on to football. Since we've been on basketball for a little bit. So
Ruh-roh.
I don't want to give this page credit. I haven't looked them up. I saw it once and I knew. So some Bush League fucking Twitter account just that represents Philadelphia sports. Puts out something today that goes semi-viral. I've seen it all over my Facebook. I'm assuming at some point you may have seen it if you were on Facebook at all today. Maybe not.
It came across the Twitter too.
Yeah. So basically, it was. I could find the tweet, but it was under the. The Eagles aren't sold on Hurts. They're. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded up and took a quarterback. they've been telling us for 2 years that Hurts wasn't the guy. He was drafted to be a backup. He's only going to be a backup. Yada yada yada. So breaking this down again, because all we can really do is, first of all, that's not a credible account that I saw it from. It wasn't anybody working for WIP. It wasn't anybody that we follow regularly for Eagles news. But let's break down this position switch from 6 to 12 again, and what it says about Hurts and what it means for the Eagles organization. So, just if the Eagles were thinking about putting themselves in a position for a quarterback, what would they have done with the number 6 pick?
Well, if you are in position for a quarterback, first we have to diagnose which quarterback. So to me, when you know that Trevor Lawrence is untouchable, it's Zach Wilson and it's Justin Fields. So you look at the teams that are interested in those guys, and that right now, we're going to go back before Miami traded. But then was the Jets were rumored to be in the Zach Wilson sweepstakes from Jump Street, regardless of what any of us talked about. They were rumored there. And Miami was in the sweet spot. You wanted a quarterback. Miami was the team you traded with. So I look at what Miami wound up ending up with, which is the 6th overall pick because they went up and back.
And real quick, Miami was in the sweet spot because either if San Fran ends up taking the guy like, and did that trade happen after or before the Eagles traded back? That happened
San Francisco traded with Miami.
Right.
Yep. And then 20 minutes later, Miami made the swap with the Eagles.
So the assumption was, before you finish your point, that San Fran at the time, before all the Mac Jones news came out, was that they were high on Trey Lance or Justin Fields. Right? Okay, so go ahead.
So if you're the Eagles and you're interested in a quarterback this year, they are the 3 guys: Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Zach Wilson. They're the franchise caliber guys that you would go after and target. At 6, you assume that there's I mean, we talked about this on this show, bro, for probably, 4 or 5 shows in a row. If Justin Fields falls to 6, you draft Justin Fields. I said it till I was fucking blue in the face. So what this says to me is that the Eagles were interested in Justin Fields. And when San Francisco moved up, again, 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. No matter what world we live in, it's never going to equal squirrel. So you look at the top 3 rated quarterbacks, San Francisco's going to get Justin Fields. They're going to get their quarterback of the future. When that happens, the certainty of Justin Fields not being at 6 came upon Howie Roseman. And if you're not going to get Justin Fields and reface your franchise, why not move back 6 spots? You're still going to get the biggest position of need that you have, which is defense. Probably one of the top 3 players on the defensive side of the football because of how this draft's going to shake out. And you gain another first-round pick next year. So I think that pre this trade, I would have agreed that the Eagles were not sold on Jalen Hurts. I would have agreed with that till then. Once that trade came and Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, and Trevor Lawrence were all out of the realm of possibility, they weren't interested in another project, right? Carson Wentz was a project. He was not an NFL now come in and win. That was never the plan for Carson Wentz. Sam Bradford was the guy he replaced. That's why he got that opportunity. So for me, if you are pre the San Francisco trade, the Philadelphia Eagles were not sold on Jalen Hurts, which to me also says right now, it doesn't mean that they're sold. It means that they think that's their best option this season. And how better to address it next year than have 3, 4 first-round draft picks, because then you have the ability to move up to wherever you need to get to because you have so much capital that draft.
100%. And the other thing, if you're Howie Roseman, that you have to be thinking is, okay, well, a team that says they want a quarterback has now jumped into the 3 spot. So, if I'm 100% sold on Jalen Hurts beyond the season, I'm probably staying at 6 and hoping that Jamar Chase is there and waiting till draft day to change back if I believe that Hurts is going to be there for a long period of time. But the reason they trade back is they don't think the guy they want at quarterback is going to slip. There's guys at quarterback, if they want a guy to develop, there's going to be guys in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round that they can draft.
Well, yeah, what stops them from drafting Kyle Trask in the 2nd round like they drafted Jalen Hurts the year before? You know what I mean?
Exactly. So
now I would say that the Joe Flacco signing tells me that that's not a possibility. But this is still the Philadelphia Eagles ran by Howie Roseman. Everything is possible. And this is a point that I made. We talked about this with Rich. You cannot draft. I don't give a shit if it's Devontae Smith. You cannot draft unless it's Jamar Chase. You cannot draft a wide receiver at 12. You cannot do it now because at 6 you had an opportunity to either end up with Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase. You had that chance and you moved backwards. Yeah. You do not give up the best receiver in the class to get a first round pick next year. There's no point for that. Now, what they had to do, in my opinion, was you're going to have these wide receiver classes, bro. I don't know how much you've noticed this. I've noticed this doing all of our mock drafts and the shit this season. These wide receiver classes are getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper every single year. I mean, since the DK Metcalf draft a couple of years ago, there's guys in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round in every draft that have come out and made a difference. And then you have the guys like the Jamar Chases and Devontae Smiths and Jalen Waddles. And there's so many good quality receivers coming. If Jalen Hurts is your answer, next season, with 3 first-round draft picks, you're going to be able to get the best receiver on the board because you're going to plug the hole of defense this season, and then you can still get an O-lineman in the first round next year, and who knows, maybe a Najee Harris comes out in the late first round next year with one of the picks you're going to have. There's so much that you address with just a simple move back 6 spots to give up the best wide receiver this year to potentially fill 4 or 5 holes in your team. You can't not make that move when you don't. Jamar Chase isn't winning you any more games right now with this team. He's just not that kind of an X-factor player for what the Eagles are. So if he was a guy that was going to put you from 7 to 9 wins, now you're going to win the division and maybe make some noise, very different story. You have an unproven quarterback. 2/3 of your offensive line are all young guys who are unproven or coming off injury like Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson. Your defense is in shambles, and you have no receivers. So one receiver is not going to fix all those problems. Jordan Howard to bring him back to be their change of pace running back again. It seems like they understand that this is a mail-it-in season.
And I think the other thing is, man, that, they're going to have to make cuts along the offensive and defensive line at some point with some of these guys, whether it ends up being Cox or Brandon Graham, or one year they just decide that Lane Johnson's, we can't deal with you being out 5 games a year, or Brandon Brooks gets injured again. They just have to separate. So we've talked about J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain. Like, if either of them are available, that's probably who you're going with at 12. There's a possibility that both those guys are off the board at 12, but then that gives you the opportunity, if they're off the board before 12, one of those offensive linemen are probably available, or you can just trade back again.
Look at how crazy this gets, bro. If an offensive lineman slips, let's say Rashawn Slater's there at 12, which would be mind-boggling. It shouldn't happen, but it could. How many teams are in the 16 to 20 range that would 1,000% give you next year's one to move up to get that guy? And now you've got 4 first-round draft picks next year. Yeah. There's so many things that can be done from this point. It can only improve. That's why when Rich asked us if Howie fucks up this draft, is this the end for Howie? I don't think so. He's built up so many draft. I mean, this is like saying the Oklahoma City Thunder's GM's going to get fired next year. He's got 34 draft picks over the next 7 years. My man's got some time. That is what I think Howie did to combat the kicking the can down the road, restructuring old contracts bullshit that is old hat. He acquired a bunch of draft picks and assets. Now he's going to say, this is my vision. Look what we can get now.
Yeah, and so there's a couple teams that are making moves. Obviously, like, the whole draft at this point kind of is targeted on exactly what the Niners do, because we think we know, and usually we don't when it comes to the 3rd through the 8th pick. These drafts rarely.
Bro, I don't know that it's just the Niners, dude. Wouldn't it throw everything upside down if the Jets did stay away from Zach Wilson or took Justin Fields? Like, they didn't go away quarterback, or they took Justin Fields?
Justin Fields goes if Justin Fields goes second, I think that San Fran's in the best spot, because you're just basically drafting, hopefully. Shanahan's like, oh my God, whoever the Jets don't take, we're going to get. It's either going to be Justin Fields or Zach Wilson. Hallelujah, I'm up at 3 right now, right? Like, you let Jets make the decision. We take the other guy. It would be crazy to see them draft Fields. I still think it just flip-flops the picks, though. San Fran can't pass up on Zach Wilson's skill set with Shanahan's offense, and they just end up going Zach Wilson. I can't imagine – I can't imagine that – I still can't imagine Mac Jones to be the pick. I'm having a lot of trouble.
Is there any chance? I don't want to talk about Mac Jones because I agree that's the stupidest narrative.
I
Now that
don't
I've
get
thought about it since we had Rich on here, that's the dumbest fucking narrative of this draft. That is such an
doesn't make any
obvious
sense.
smokescreen. I
Yeah.
mean, you asked Rich why they sent all their guys to Mac Jones Pro Day. Because it's a fucking smokescreen. It's the most obvious smokescreen in the history of smokescreens. I have a more interesting what if question of crazy shit, which I think is just as likely as Mac Jones being drafted third overall. What if Zach Wilson was so impressive that Jacksonville takes Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence slips to 2?
The only reason that Urban Meyer's coming out of retirement is because Trevor Lawrence is going first this year. He wouldn't. He's not. He's had the conversation with the owner. We know we're picking, right? Okay, yeah. I'll sign for 10 years. Like
I'm just saying, bro. What if what Zach Wilson's done in this weird offseason that we go through now with his pro day, with his interviews? Let me ask you this question, right? If you are the head of scouting and you saw Zach Wilson and you saw Trevor Lawrence and you believed that Zach Wilson was better, aren't you going to die on the hill of Zach Wilson to improve your football team?
Well, we know that the from being Eagles fans that the scouts don't have the last say, right? I mean,
I know that Trevor Lawrence is fucking Matt Leinart, and
Yeah.
I also, again, I am not a proponent of Zach Wilson. I think Zach Wilson is Mitchell Trubisky. I think that these two guys are going to be passable, okay NFL quarterbacks, and Justin Fields is your light the field on fire quarterback in this draft. I believe that. I've believed that for months. I've said this.
Yes.
I can't say that it would be, again, if I had a fucking crystal ball and I looked into it and you said, what do you see? And I said, Jacksonville passes on Trevor Lawrence and drafts Zach Wilson instead. You wouldn't go, no way. It's fucking Jacksonville. Of course they could do something stupid.
I mean, the Jets, first of all, the Jets couldn't turn in that card fast enough. They please, everybody's on speed dial. If we don't get this picking right now, everybody's fired. I mean, but I actually think just with the moves and the coaching and some of the rookie of the year running back that they have, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, that would be my nightmare. I mean, I think, to be honest with you, I know that Jacksonville ended up with the number 1 pick. I think they're in a way better spot than the New York Jets. I think the Jets are just in the most miserable spot. And the Jacksonville Jaguars were good a couple years ago. They showed you that as a franchise, they can be okay. The owner showed you he's willing to spend money. Jets fans hate their fucking owner. They just got a new coach. They just ruined Sam Darnold, then traded him away. It's like, it's terrible. Speaking of the Sam Darnold trade, I saw something I thought was intriguing because we've been talking about this this Panthers trade with the Jets where I said, hey, it's kind of weird to me that in a rebuild, the Panthers feel like I know you said it's only a second, a fourth, and a sixth, but they feel like they can give up 3 picks in total to go get a guy that realistically was ranked bottom 5. And in regards to turnovers, Justin, I saw something interesting. Sam Darnold in his last season at USC had something like 22 turnovers. There was like 10 fumbles and 11. So he's turned the ball. He turns the ball over. Okay,
for sure.
That's something they have to fix.
For sure.
But the Panthers' mismanagement, and we can talk about Cam all we want. I think just we'll see how he is healthy this year, and we'll see how he plays at quarterback, and we'll see if he can regain any of this. But the Panthers cut Cam Newton to give Teddy Bridgewater a $60 million contract, and then traded for Sam Darnold the next year.
Well, so Teddy Bridgewater showed you that he is, again, it's a Tyrod Taylor thing, right? Like the Chargers could not the Chargers could not say no to Justin Herbert. They had to take that guy, even though they had Tyrod Taylor. Justin Herbert was never meant to step foot on the field. So to me, this is what Carolina looked at, and this tells me a lot about what these teams see in these quarterbacks. If Trey Lance and Mac Jones were considered quality prospects at the quarterback position, Carolina does not make that trade. Carolina hopes and prays that at 8, Trey Lance or Mac Jones falls to them. Yeah. Because of the San Francisco trade up and they beat everybody else to the Justin Fields position, that tells me that these teams that are quarterback needy don't see the value in those two guys, in Trey Lance and Mac Jones. Now, again, this is not to say that no team sees that value. I'm sure there's a team that sees Trey Lance and says, hey, he could sit behind my starter for 2 years and maybe one day become something. There's teams that Phillip Rivers going to the Colts. Obviously, they have Carson now, but that team that's almost there and Mac Jones is a polished product, maybe he's our best shot because we can get him at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That trade to me says that Carolina believes that Sam Darnold is better than every other quarterback in this draft except for the big three. I mean, how else can we look at what that trade is? That is Carolina making a decision that their best bet to improve their quarterback position is a guy in Sam Darnold over those two guys that could fall. I mean, that is really what that says to me.
Yeah, there's some fucking crazy mocks out right now, bro. And I gotta call out one. This just seemed like clickbait as soon as I saw it today. Peter Schrager of Good Morning Football had hold on as I pause this. Had the Patriots trading up to 4 to get Justin Fields because San Francisco drafted Mac Jones. And I'm like, first of all, I don't think anybody truly believes San Fran's actually drafting Mac Jones. And secondly, the Patriots, all the wheeling and dealing that they've done and the people they have, they're like, they're not a team that's ever traded up. They're also not a team that's ever signed $200 million worth of free agents in a season, but I do feel like the Patriots do feel like Cam Newton is enough to get them to the playoffs, just obviously not over the hump. And I feel like they think they can do it in the division, just as a wild card. They're not going to beat Buffalo. They're probably Miami and them might be jostling. We'll see how Tua comes out and plays this year. Don't sleep on the Patriots. They're pissed. He's going to be great this year. He's going to be great.
I like that you stopped yourself before you said he is going to be Steve Young. I appreciate the pause to say great this year because I know that you don't want to dig that hole too deep just in case you need to make a quick exit. So that is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life for a couple of reasons. First of all, Justin Fields isn't going to be available at 4. Second of all, the level of capital that Bill Belichick would have to separate himself from to get to 4. They don't do that. You know what I genuinely believe, bro? I really believe this. I think the most likely, if New England is to end up with a quarterback this draft, it's going to be a 7th round fucking stinker like that kid last year who's going to be the next Tom Brady. That type of a pick. Or he finds a way to either move back up to the tail end of the 1st round or up in the beginning of the 2nd round. And I think Kyle Trask is their guy.
Yeah, I think
that's the dude that they are after.
Somebody's going to reach for Kyle, and it's either going to be late 1st, early 2nd. Probably not late 1st. You'd have to trade up. The teams on the back of the 1st all have quarterbacks, right? So you would have to trade up from the 2nd into the top of the 1st to take it away from a team in the top 10 of the 2nd round to kind of get your guy.
You know who did this last?
Lamar Jackson.
The last time this happened was Baltimore had Joe Flacco and a very successful run, and they traded up. I think it was that year's 2, that year's 4, and a future 2 maybe. It was a big package to get up to 32 to get Lamar Jackson. And I think that's the spot that Bill Belichick would have to get in. So there's 2 ways you get there. Obviously, from 15 you trade backwards, or from 15 in the 2nd round you package a couple of future future 3rd and 4th round picks, and you can probably jump up to 32 again. I believe that if New England ends up with a rookie quarterback, it's Kyle Trask, and that's how they get there.
And even so, I would argue that they would more likely trade out of the 1st round completely to an early 2nd round pick to grab them than they would move up 5 or 10 spots to get a guy. And to be honest with you, I'm not even sure at this point, just with all the talk that's going on with Fields moving back up people's boards, that Mac Jones and Trey Lance aren't going to slide to the middle 10 to 15
But I'm
range.
telling you, bro, I've been saying this for 4 months now. Mac Jones should be a B- at worst C plus starting quarterback in this league. He's not going to be. He's going to be fucking Red Rocket. Andy Dalton. I think you can expect a career like that out of a guy like Mac Jones. He's not going to win you many by himself. He's not going to wow you with his arm or with his talent or his athleticism, but he's a guy that you can put in there. He's going to be responsible and not turn the ball over. So if your team is good enough, he can help you. Trey Lance is a fucking wild card, bro. I mean, Trey Lance could be. Do you remember what's the quarterback's name in Washington? It was a quarterback and he became a wide receiver. I can't fucking remember his name.
Pryor.
Terrell Pryor. That could be Trey Lance. That is how unknown that kid's future could be. Tremendous athlete, but who the fuck knows if he's going to be a quarterback at the next level? You know what I mean? I don't think either one of those guys are even on the radar for Bill Belichick right now because the team's not good enough for Mac Jones to set him over the hump, and Bill Belichick does not take risks on unknown players. He just doesn't do it.
He knows the unknown players and he drafts them in the spot that they need to be drafted in. We're gonna look up at 15 and we're gonna be like, who the hell is that? And the guy's gonna be a Pro Bowler.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah, but you never know. And they pick guys in the spot that they're in and they acquire assets. It's what they do. So draft talk over. Eagles not trading back up. Wouldn't be surprised if they traded back down. Justin Fields is not going to slide. Mac Jones is not going to San Francisco. Book it, print it out, call me out on it on draft night, and we'll see what happens. Let's talk about the Phils.
So live time real fast. I just want to they're playing the Braves right now. This is game 3 of the second series. They've lost the first 2. Everybody stop trying to find the fucking fire extinguishers. We're in 8 games into a fucking 162 game season. Calm down.
That's a good point. That's a good point because when we were 4 games into the season, we were going to win the World Series.
Don't make me mute your microphone. Don't make me mute your microphone, motherfucker. Listen. So they were down 5-4 going into the 4th inning, tied the game up. We're tied 5-5 in the 6th. Bryce Harper hits a solo shot in the 6th to put them up 6-5. And then in the bottom of the 6th, Ronald Acuna hits a solo shot to tie the game at 6. So currently we're in the bottom of the 8th. 1 on, no out. Jose Alvarado's pitching. Dansby Swanson's up right now in a 6-6 tie in the bottom of the 8th inning. If the Phillies win this game, I have no further concerns. If they get swept by the Braves, my initial thoughts are probably true, which is the Braves are just the best fucking team in this division.
That's Harper's second in 2 days, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So
he had a solo shot yesterday.
Started off the first 6 games with none. He was lacing a couple balls, just couldn't get a hold of one. And he finally connected yesterday while the whole crowd in Atlanta, I think, was booing him and chanting overrated. And then he takes a pitch over the right field wall, line drives, and just kind of, flips the bat, runs around the bat. Bryce hasn't played up to his contract.
Wait a minute. Stop. I'm not going to let you get away with it because I just listened last week. I stayed in my car for 20 extra minutes to listen to this bullshit argument. Tell me what Bryce Harper needs to do to live up to his fucking contract. Let me know what that is. Do you understand that he's making less than guys like the fucking
everybody's getting overpaid, right? Like
correct. But you are overpaying the least because Bryce Harper was the first guy to go after that contract. You got 13 years and $300 million. Bryce Harper is a bargain for what you're going to pay in 5 years, 7 years, 8 years for a guy in his early 30s, which Bryce Harper will be by then, to have the level of stats that he does. Bryce Harper's fucking OPS is in the high 900s. His batting average has never been great. But what are you expecting out of this fucking guy, bro? He's a 30 home run, 100 RBI guy. That's what you signed. That's what he's giving you. What is all your fucking problem? I don't get it. He's not fucking Ken Griffey Jr., bro, or Barry Bonds. That's not the player this guy is. Fucking goddamn.
He's with 275. I think he was way under, and I think he's had a couple years under 3. I think he's only had like 1 or 2 years over 3. But it's just not when you sign someone for that much money, You just want to you have this specific level of production in your mind. Like when you give max contracts in the NBA, when you give one to Ben Simmons, you're like, man, can you get 20 a game? Can we get 20 a game from you? Rudy Gobert, I know you're not a scorer, but like, can you not be a liability on offense? Like that type of stuff. He's not a liability. That's not what I'm saying. But we get contracts out, and then we have these expectations they should live up to. And I just think he's like so far just a little short. That's all.
He's a top 7 to 10 defender at his position. He production wise has been what he's always been. I mean, the guy walks. He's not Ryan Howard. Like, we're talking about him like he's fucking Ryan Howard. We're talking about him like he only hits 50 home runs or strikes out 300 times. That's not who this. He's a better player than we're giving him credit for. And all this fucking anger about Bryce Harper's contract. This is what guys cost. Do you understand? Albert Pujols is making $35 million a year to basically do nothing.
Yeah,
like this is what I mean, dude.
At the time of the contract, Albert Pujols was the best hitter in baseball, and you had to give him that contract to keep him on the team to be the best hitter in the league for the next 2 to 3 years until he fell off a cliff because you thought you had a window to win, right? I mean, that's just what it was.
The
right?
Angels got fucked. Yo, speaking of real quick, before we separate on, I know you want to talk about the Masters, but I have a question that came up the other day, and now that we're talking about the Angels, I got there. Okay, we're going to imagine a world where the Los Angeles Angels never improve as a franchise or a team. Mike Trout is still the player that he is, which is thus far in his career the best player in baseball. This is what separates baseball from other sports. You ready? I know how you should answer this question. I'm not going to say I know how you're going to answer this question. I never want to assume you're making the smart move. If the Angels never make the playoffs with Mike Trout, and Mike Trout has an 18-year MLB career, is Mike Trout a Hall of Famer?
Of course.
Okay, see, it's baseball's so different. Baseball's its own kind of sport that way.
Yeah, of course. So
if you have a basketball player that never drags his team to the playoffs,
there's 5 guys on the court, and
exactly,
and Trout can't pitch. He's not closing games. He plays one position in the infield or the outfield, so it's like you can't. He gets 3 at bats or 4 at bats a game. So there's no.
And Mike Trout has, if you watch baseball, there's no denying Mike Trout has been the best player in Major League Baseball for the better part of the last 10 years. Like, that's just how good he's been. Unfortunately for him, he got drafted to an organization that's shitty, and he signed a big deal hoping that it would get better, and it just hasn't.
Yeah, there's a specific amount of control that you have as a player in other sports, and especially at specific positions. If you're great at basketball, you need one other guy to help you win a championship, and the two of you can basically lead that team to the promised land. In football, as much control as you have being a quarterback, you can have that level of control somewhat as a wide receiver. But like, when we compare running backs, it's like almost like we take into consideration the offensive line in the franchise when we think about it, right? Because Barry never did anything, and everybody would look at Barry and he's like, there's 3 people in the fucking backfield when you watch his highlights, and he's dancing around, and he's getting past them, he's running 50 yards for a touchdown. Like, we take all that into consideration. You can't even you have to take it into consideration in baseball. It's the only thing to take into consideration.
Yeah, like I mean that the reason why I asked that question is because Mike Trout, if his numbers continue and his team never makes the playoffs, Mike Trout is not only a Hall of Famer, he is a unanimous first ballot Hall of Famer.
Oh yeah,
unanimous. Nobody questions it.
He's going to be one of the 10 best players ever to play baseball.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing that's crazy, bro. This is why I get so fucking irritated about the Bryce Harper hate. Bryce Harper is not Mike Trout. Stop talking about Bryce Harper like we want him to be fucking Mike Trout. That's not his job. His job's to be a plus defensive player in right field, hit 28 to 32 home runs, drive in 100 runs a year, and bat 270 or higher. And that's what he does. That's what he's done his whole career. That is what your contract earned you. Francisco Lindor, who's older, who's not as offensively gifted, who's probably the same level of defense, now obviously more flashy, plays shortstop rather than fucking right field. But Francisco Lindor just got a bigger contract than Bryce Harper and has never been offensively productive the way that Bryce Harper is. Like, the people are talking about Francisco Lindor like he's Mookie fucking Betts, and he's just not. There are guys that are just different. Bryce Harper is a guy that he's not different. He's just a really fucking good player. He's not a special player. He's not transcendent or generational. He's Alec Boehm is the best hitter on this Phillies roster. He is your transcendent generational guy in the batter's box. Alec Boehm is the guy that you need to watch if you want to see a hitter that is in that box is as dominant against any pitcher in baseball. It's Alec Boehm. It's not Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper does get overwhelmed when he's batting against lefties. There are things that Bryce Harper struggles with, but for the love of fucking God, $28 million a year buys you what that guy is. That's it. That's the end of the Bryce Harper rant.
That's the rant. Okay, we'll move on. I like to take screenshots throughout the week, Justin.
Okay.
And, I save them for the podcast, and I rarely get to them, but we have a couple minutes. Real quick, I watched the Masters the last couple days. I don't watch any golf. I don't play golf. I don't even go to the driving.
You're a rich white kid from Jersey, bro. You're a golfer. Come on.
Saturday, my roommate's watching it, and I sit down, I start watching them. My grandfather used to watch golf all the time. I sit down, start watching it. But just because I watched a little bit on Saturday, I had to see what the result was on Sunday because I started to get into it a little bit. So I watched. So if anybody wasn't following, who gives a shit? Matsuyama is a player from Japan. He's the first player to ever win a Masters championship. I think the closest anybody from Japan as a premier player has ever gotten in the Masters was fourth, so he made history today. The guy who finished second, Zalatoris, he just got out of college a couple years ago, and he finished second and earned a nice, at 24 years old, bud, $1.2 million purse.
That'll change your life.
Home with I think he probably had money, I'm assuming, because he's played golf for a while, and golf kids come from rich families typically and have money. Maybe that's just a prejudice I'm putting on it, but regardless, or whatever it's called.
Because you're the rich white kid from Jersey, you know?
I am not a rich white kid. I'm making good money myself. That's so another couple things. In 2018, when James Harden won the MVP.
Oh boy.
LeBron had more points, more rebounds, more assists.
I know.
10-point higher field goal percentage.
Bro, I know we agree. We agree with this.
I just had to screenshot it because I'm like,
it's the same thing in the Steph Curry year when Steph Curry won unanimously. It's the same thing about the Russell Westbrook year when Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double. Are those things impressive? Yes, but that is not most impressive player award. It's the most valuable player award. Yeah. If you gave me enough time, I could start at LeBron James' first season at 19 years old, and every single year of his career eloquently lay out why he was the most valuable player on the floor. Because since he's entered the NBA, he's the most valuable basketball player. And second place is probably Chris Paul. So there might be a couple of years where I could waver. He wouldn't win everyone, but he'd win almost all of them.
He'd win. The argument for like him winning like even 6 or 7 is ridiculous. Because like it could easily be 10. But
they can't take away Michael's legacy because it's all the NBA was revitalized by Michael Jordan. That's why they're $1 billion franchise.
I'm glad you brought this up because I was just thinking before we got on here. So you know that the biggest threat to Michael Jordan's legacy is not LeBron James.
Oh, who is it?
Did you know that?
Who is it?
It is Father Time. You know why it's Father Time, bud?
Because at one point, Dr. J was the greatest player ever?
Exactly right. So we're going to go down this path in about 20 years. Listen, what perspective was I putting this? Let's just say we watch Patrick Mahomes' career, right? And Patrick Mahomes ends up going to, 14 Super Bowls. Right? Let's say he goes to 14 Super Bowls and he wins 5 of them. Is he better than Tom Brady? I think it's a pretty easy answer.
Well, I don't agree that it's an easy answer. It depends on how he wins them.
Okay.
If you're going to give me a overloaded offense with Tyreek Hill and all these fucking weapons and the athleticism that Patrick Mahomes has, yes, but with an asterisk of if Tom Brady had the physical capability of Patrick Mahomes, how fucking good would that guy have been? You know what I mean?
So how about this? If so, Brady's going to end up. Brady was at his 10th last year, right?
Yes.
Let's say he gets to another Super Bowl, right? And he goes to 11, regardless of the outcome. Let's just say he has 7 rings and 11. He went there 11 times, right? Patrick Mahomes goes to the Super Bowl 22 times and wins 1 or 2 less than Brady does. He's better than Brady, right? I mean, given like 22. Let's say he goes to 20. It's a ridiculous number, I know. 22 Super Bowl. I'm asking for a reason. 22.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question, and I think I know where you're going with this. So let me try to set you up even better. It's the question of, wouldn't you rather lose in the last game or series than any time before? Sure.
I'm watching the Iverson finals, and I'm like, well, looking at this team, and it's like, there's got to be perspective on everything. You can't just say it's the argument, right? You can't. Well, 6 rings, like got to the final 6 times once. Okay, well, give me a little like an outline of what happened here. Like, were they the best team? Did they have 2 top 5 players? Who did they play? Did MJ get his ass whooped 5 years in a row to the fucking Celtics?
And again, to say this is so important to your argument. I said it last week. This is so important. 27 of 30 NBA franchises have less appearances in the NBA Finals than LeBron James does. That statistic is all that should need to be said. There's nothing else that should need to be said.
Yeah, and listen, LeBron's gonna retire in a couple years. There's gonna be a player like I mean, we're gonna hate the guy, right? It's gonna be like LaMelo. Like LaMelo's gonna end up being like all time. I'm throwing a name out. He's gonna end up being
Zion. I'll accept Zion. Don't say fucking LaMelo Ball.
Whatever you want to say. And he has this great name. His name's Zion. And he's a great jumper, and he throws down these ridiculous dunks, and nobody wants it. And he starts shooting threes, and we're like, he's better than LeBron. But eventually, the guys that are watching basketball that are teenagers, 20s and 30s, and we're now 50, 60, 70 years old at some point, like, we're going to be like, nah, dude, I watched LeBron. He was fucking way better than that guy. And it's just fucking time. That's all.
Well, so here's part of that problem, though, I think, dude. I said this. We've talked about this when we had the LeBron argument. I know that in 20 years, the next LeBron will be here. I know that there's going to be a guy that is bigger, stronger, faster, and better. So it's whether or not they accomplish that, right? Like it's the Greg Oden or Derrick Rose factor. There's plenty of guys who raw ability could have been the next best guy. I mean, Derrick Rose, right? As a prime example, look at how dominant that guy was before he got hurt. Who knows what Derrick Rose's career looks like in Chicago if he never gets hurt because his coach is a fucking idiot against an 8th seed in trash time, letting him play the fucking game. So there's going to be a guy, right? There's going to be a guy that we anoint like a Giannis that we're going to say is the dude, and eventually the dude will accomplish it. I don't think that our generation is going to fight that as much, bro. No. I think that we are more this is just a generational thing. I'm 30, you're 30. Us and our generation accept change. That's what that older generation does. The boomers don't, bro. You're 50 plus. You don't want the change. You run from the change.
America was the same for a really long time. And on our lifetime, it's changed. Like, I've been alive for 32 years. It's like really changed. Like really changed.
Phillies go up 1 run. Sorry to interrupt you. Phillies go up 1 run on a sacrifice fly from Didi Gregorius. Alec Boehm scores after a double in the top of the 9th. 2 outs. The Phillies might win this game, bro.
We're going to get off and watch the game. We'll be back on Wednesday, 9 p.m. as usual.
We will be on Spotify tonight. This episode should be up by tomorrow morning.
Last episode is already on there. We're going to rush off and watch the game. Josh, I will talk to you throughout the week and see you on Wednesday.
Sounds fantastic, buddy.
See you guys.
All right, man.